You know, all these people actually want to be stoned to death and want to be sexually segregated and want to have less rights and want to walk around in a mobile prison and have acid thrown in their faces if they refuse. They want to be walking to school in Afghanistan and have acid thrown in their faces because they're girls. They want to be stoned to death because they fell in love with the wrong boy in northern Iraq. And you know that's not the case. Deep down we all know that that's not true, that people do deserve and do want to live a life that's worthy of the 21st century. And I think that while people have the absolute right to believe in anything they want, they have that right as a private matter. And that it's crucial that we defend values of the Enlightenment, like secularism, like universal rights, and a humanity without labels. And I think if we start by holding the human being sacred, I think we can really go a long way in battling the challenges that we face, which is both political Islam and US-led militarism, which I want to add is, I think, both two sides of the same coin. They feed off each other. They both use indiscriminate violence. They use religion and religious morality, which I think is so immoral, actually. And it's important to stand up to them. And people everywhere, we need to work together if we're going to win this. And it is important to win it, because it does affect real-life human beings. We're not having a theoretical discussion about, the Christianity during the Inquisition. We're living during an Islamic Inquisition today, and we all have a duty and task to confront it. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm losing my voice. And I'd love to hear your comments, questions, anything, because I think that will help us start discussing and maybe raising some of the issues that you're more interested in talking about. So thank you very much.
Sort of moderate the question answer period, so I'll keep in mind whose hands go up and just essentially hand you the microphone, or if you want to stand up and talk, feel free to do so. I have a couple of questions of my own. I hope you guys are okay with it, but I'll just give you a chance to ask your questions first. So is there anybody who has any questions at this point for Maryam? Or comments? I'll just get this lady first.
As a Canadian living abroad, I was always intensely proud of being Canadian and of Canadian multiculturalism. And I remember 20 years ago, and when I moved out and lived in various countries, that was something that I would always say, there is no country where you feel less of an immigrant than Canada. As getting older and just sort of a living life and getting experience, and now I live in Britain, it seems to me that it's the more I read and the more I know, multiculturalism has become almost a dirty word to me. And I'm very worried about it. And what I'm worried about is that ordinary Canadians, my friends that live, my relations that live in Canada, are totally ignorant about the way multiculturalism affects human rights and the rights of women. Maybe you can comment on some of the things that have been happening in Britain and in Europe, especially perhaps the German cases with the women there. Thank you.
We'll just hear a few people at least the next. I don't know if this is going to reach all the way to the back. So can I just ask if you guys just introduce yourself by your name, and if you want to maybe stand up so people can hear you, and then ask your question or comment. Did everybody hear that? How close is Sharia law to becoming or coming into effect in Britain right now? Was the question. So we'll take one more, and then we'll give a chance for Maryam to respond. The gentleman back there, if you could just stand up, introduce yourself, and ask your question or comment.
My question is, you said that, or from what I understood, that Sharia law is a problem in the Middle East. So in the 1400 years of Islamic rule in the Middle East, could you please cite at least 5 cases where women have been stoned to death because of zina?
Okay, please, let's just keep this civil. So the gentleman asked a question, and I think that he deserves a response. So those are the 3 questions.
Can you repeat the last question, please?
Oh, the last question was within the last 1400.
Within the 1400 years of Islamic rule, I went 5 cases where women have been stoned to death.
5 cases where women have been stoned to death within the last.
If it's Sharia law the problem, then you could at least cite at least 5 cases in 1400 years.
Of course.
Okay, well, I'm not sure which to answer first. Well, on the issue of cultural relativism, I think we should look at cultural relativism as a dirty word if we're part of a progressive movement. I think what cultural relativism does is it takes the human being out of the equation, and the human being becomes a culture, a belief, a religion, and no longer a human being. And so based on what the person's belief or culture is deemed to be, that's all they deserve. And I think that is such a dirty word and such a dirty practice if you really begin to think about it. And if you care about how human beings should be treated. And I think there's so many examples of the outrageousness of multiculturalism. For example, Garanka, you mentioned in Germany, there was I think she was a Moroccan woman, am I right, or Algerian woman, a Moroccan woman. She went to a German court. You know how when you want to get a divorce, you need, if you want to get it immediately, you need to show some extenuating circumstances. And the hell had been beaten out of her for many years by her husband. And she came to the court and said, I want a divorce right away because this man is killing me. And the German judge, we're not talking about a Sharia court, the German judge said that he has to take into consideration her culture and her religion and her beliefs. And based on the Quran and the surah that says a woman should be first admonished if she's disobedient and then confined and then beaten, that it was all right for her husband to beat her. And therefore, she couldn't get a divorce using extenuating circumstances. And there are instances, for example, in Britain where you have girls and boys coming to these courts for inheritance, and of course boys get double what girls get, or girls get half of what boys get. So in a sense, what I think cultural relativism does is that it holds culture and religion as paramount. And I think that's a huge problem, because the fact is that we are all human beings, and if we don't all have the same rights and the same standards and norms applying to us, then what's left of the whole situation, And I think this is the problem and this is what I was alluding to earlier, is that, the whole concepts of rights, equality, respect, these are things that we're all raised vis-a-vis human beings. We have to respect human beings. Human beings have to be equal. They have to have rights. They have to have freedoms. Now, irrespective of what happens to the human beings, its cultures need to have these rights and be respected. Beliefs need to have these rights and be respected. And so it's come to a point where you can't criticize Islam anymore because you need to respect religion. No, you don't need to respect religion. In the same way that you don't need to respect my beliefs. Freedom of expression is the only thing that millions of people have at their disposal in order to challenge what's wrong in the world. And and freedom of expression only matters when you're criticizing that which is taboo, that which is sacred. Otherwise, all we could do is, exchange recipes with each other. And even then, if you're a vegan, you would be offended by someone's halal meats recipe. So there's not very much you can talk about if you want to talk about things that don't offend. And I mean, in a sense, saying that something offends is really a prescription to restrict that speech. I think oftentimes too, nobody sets out to offend, but people find things offensive. I find a lot of things in Islam offensive. I find a lot of things that the political Islamic movement does offensive. And I think if we can